Hello friends, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we explore consciousness, the mystery and love. And this week we're going into winging it, Fomo, being gentle on the inside, not being understood on the spiritual journey, and a question about expecting the worst so as not to be disappointed. Now let's have a quick look at the memes from the Further Emergence Instagram feed. First one, I didn't write this one, but I think it's brilliant. It's just very simple, just big letters. It says, everyone is just winging it. Everyone is just winging it. Winging sounds weird when you say it early in the morning. But it's just a great reminder that there is no adults that have it together. You know, when you're growing up as a child, you kind of have this feeling that there are adults that have it together, and that can last until you are, 70 or 80 or 90 years old, until it dawns on you that, hopefully it dawns on you sooner than that, but that feeling is still at the background that there are some adults around somewhere running the show, and there aren't. There are people who look like adults, who have the appearance of being adults, who have the appearance of having their act together. But that's all it is, just the appearance. On the inside, everyone is just winging it, And I know that because everyone is dealing with the same stuff that you and I are, meaning that anything could happen at any time. And we can get very good at planning for the future and having pensions and saving and anticipation, but that doesn't protect you from anything, really, because all it is an illusion of that maybe if I do this, things will work out in a certain way. And it's fine to plan for things and organize, and there's a certain amount of satisfaction for planning for something in the future, like a holiday or something like that. A lot of the pleasure of going on a holiday is the run-up to going on the holiday. That's often why people are a bit depressed when they're actually on holiday, because they maybe don't know about that. That the pleasure, a lot of the pleasure in a holiday is the planning and in the thinking about and in the anticipation. And when they actually get on the beach or wherever their holiday is, it's a bit of a, okay, this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. Whereas if you kind of know that, then you can factor that in. But it's nice to plan for these things, and it's very pleasurable to anticipate. But you don't know what's going to happen. The plane might not work, or you might not get off. There might be a strike. There might be any kind of thing could happen. And if you fall under the spell of the illusion of I'll plan my life, into oblivion so that I'm in charge of everything. Well, my experience, life just does its thing. It just rips through. Like my spiritual teacher, Barry Long, used to have this phrase of that life rips through men's ordered gardens. Okay, now the men's thing is just a product. He was a man of his time. But you could say people's ordered gardens. So the idea of a garden, if you think about someone's garden with the lawn, the grass and the trees and the clothesline and all that, it's all very put together and organized, and it's like nature controlled to within an inch of its life, and then life just plowing right across that. It's such a strong image. And in my experience, it's true, that, we're all strapped to the front of a train that's moving, our own individual trains, and it's moving, the train's moving, and we don't know where it's going. That's, So this little phrase, everyone is winging it, just really sums that up for me. The next thing I had on the feed were testimonials. Every now and then I like to put up some testimonials because people are kind enough to send them to me, and it's just, they're lovely, And these are testimonials for the one-to-one work I do, which is hard to explain. It's hard to talk about. It's a bit magic. It's a bit wild. Basically, I help people with physical problems, emotional problems, spiritual problems. How I do that is I go behind the scenes. I meet them in the mystery, and amazing things happen. Okay, now I'm not going to read all the testimonials because it makes me uncomfortable, and they're long. But I'll read you a couple of little quick extracts. One person says, "I was sick, disconnected, and broken. Then God brought John into my life." So that's pretty. I mean, it's like getting a referral from God. I mean, that's fantastic. And such a lovely thing to say. Another person says, "John is a treasure, one of those rare healers who is dedicated to his craft, can intuitively feel into the energy blockages in your being, and release them and raise your spirits and health levels with quiet confidence and assurance." Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Such a lovely thing to say. Another person says, "Instantly I know my intuition has guided me to the person that can help. I believe John's listening skill from a kind, gentle heart is one of his greatest skills." Wow. I'm so humbled by these things that people say. It's beautiful. So then back to the memes. The next one I did write, it's "No FOMO" is the headline. "Even the slightest glimmer that someone else might be having a better time with some other people, no less, can be excruciating. Remember, every image shared is a fiction. The only thing you are really missing out on is the sweetness of being. It is there for you in every moment. It never goes away. It's always available. It is real." And then in brackets, "If you can't feel it, look behind the pain." I wrote this when everybody was locked down, but it's kind of applicable still. The being locked down thing was like with some other people, no less, because there was a time when people were in their houses and the lockdown rules were loosening. And if you saw somebody on social media who was with one other person or two other people, it was like, it just made FOMO just even more extreme, Isn't it funny the way those times have really drifted? I was only talking to somebody the other day, and they were kind of going, "Well, when was that? When did that happen?" It feels like, did that happen? And I think that's a lot of that has to do with we're all so keen to just get out and get on with things that there hasn't been a huge amount of reflection on those times because everyone's just been so busy with getting on with it. And maybe in a way we're kind of a bit traumatized and we don't want to think about it too much. But FOMO still exists. It's very, very, very present on social media when you can look into people's lives in a way that never did before. You'd walk down the street maybe and you might catch glimpses into houses or just the way that person's house is together, or you might go, "Oh, they look like they're doing great," or you might talk to them and they might be a friend of yours and they tell you about their lives and what's going on for them, and it just sounds like everything's great. But I heard somebody saying the other day that comparison is the thief of joy. I thought that's very good. That's very wise. And it's true, and like that FOMO is about comparison, because, it's that thing of wherever you go, there you are. Like, even if you did go to the party that you feel like you're missing out on, or the holiday or the beautiful life, it would still be you. You'd have all your stuff with you, you'd have all the things that you're dealing with now, it'd still be there with you. Because there really is no getting away from that, of facing who not so much who you are, but what your experience is, like everything can be very much a distraction from that. So, and FOMO is a very seductive distraction because it feeds into this idea that there's a better version of us somewhere in a parallel universe. And maybe there is. I don't know whether it's better, but it'd be different. They'd be having a different experience. Like somehow there's some part of us kind of knows that there are parallel universes all happening all at the same time. And there is a better version of us, or what we call a better version, but a different version, or a version that's having a different experience. And that's true, but it'll only be externally. Because if, as it's like, say, the holiday thing I was talking about before, it's like thinking about the holiday is very different from having the holiday, And if it goes well, the feeling of being on the holiday is as good as, or maybe better than, the idea or what you thought the holiday was going to be. But most times there's a feeling of disconnection, because it's like, I imagined it would be this way, but now it's here and it's still me. It's still me here having this experience. And that would be the same in all the parallel universes, where you had all the money, where you had all the sex, where you had all the good looks, where you had all the friends, where you had all the everything else that you thought you would have. It'd still be you having that experience. So that's good to kind of remember, because it means that if you can come into your own experience now and not try and distract yourself away from it, just come into it and feel it and face it. It begins to change. It's difficult when you start to do that initially. When you begin to see everything as a distraction, it's hard, but it does begin to get easier. Next one I did right too. It says, gently does it. You're the only one who looks out through those eyes. Only you know what it's like in there. Hard or soft, you can choose. No one else has to know. You can be as gentle as you like inside, and no one will know, unless you want them to. And that's the idea of feeling like you've got to be tough, in the world. You've got to be hard in the world. And the world is a hard place, and you have to, this kind of thing. It's like you can be as gentle as you like on the inside. Nobody knows what's going on in there. So on the inside, it can be fluffy bunnies and rainbows and fairies and beautiful elves, and you can be living on the Shire on the inside, and nobody needs to know. Like, no one can see that, So you can be as soft and gentle on the inside as you want, and no one needs to know unless you tell them. Okay? And you telling them is at your discretion and whether you feel it's going to be received well. So it's just a good reminder of, because we are so forward facing, we look into the world so much that we sort of feel, we kind of forget about what it's like on the inside, and that we have sovereignty over it, that we can have it whatever way we want on the inside, and no one is going to see it. Because we kind of think, I can't be soft and gentle because then people will see it, it'll come out, it'll seep out the sides. It doesn't. People are perceptive. Everyone is very perceptive, and we all know what's going on for everyone else, even if we're not conscious of knowing it. But, no one's going to walk up to you in the supermarket and go, hang on, you've got rainbows inside. That's not going to happen. So knowing that means you can just allow yourself to be. It allows you to explore and actually see how you are on the inside more, which is a beautiful thing to do, because it takes the pressure off. The pressure of, I should be a certain way. The more you let go of that, and the more you turn in, the more you can see how you actually are on the inside. And it's lovely. Farm news. I don't really have a huge amount of farm news for you. The sun's been shining most of the time. So that's been good. And I've been digging. I've been kind of, as I said, as I've been mentioning, this is kind of it's like going to the gym for me, this is. It's like they're these mounds that were made by a digger and just left. And they're just unpleasant to look at for me, because it's beautiful nature all around, and then there's these weird mounds, So I've just been, little by little, I'll go out with my little shovel and rake and whatever, and just let them settle down. Let them settle down. Well, there's quite a bit involved in that, but it's nice kind of thing to do. It reminds me of bubble wrap. If you ever find yourself with some bubble wrap and you start bursting it, and how compelling that can be. And so flattening these little mounds is a bit like that for me. Hey, did you know that these podcasts are on YouTube? If you're just listening, yes, they are. So often when I answer questions or, respond to the lovely letters that people send me, I go outside. So you can see the beautiful nature that I was talking about. Like, say, I have in the past stood on the hills as I've been doing the digging, or in forests or whatever. Beautiful nature. So, yeah, go and have a look on YouTube, just the further emergence. If you put in further emergence, it'll pop up. Did you know I write? I write these. Well, I write, a blog. It's funny that blogs are still on the go, isn't it, at this stage? But there's no other word for them. I write a blog, and I send out friendly notes every Sunday. So if you want to get those friendly notes, go to furtheremergence.com. If you want to write to me, I love hearing from you, whether it's just a question or whether you want to hear my perspective on something. John@furtheremergence.com. I like hearing from you. It's very good. This is a new section I'm trying out. It's called I've got life hacks written down to remind me. And it's kind of like, I notice that I do lots of little things in my day that I've slowly kind of collected over the years that just are helpful in my life. And I thought I would let you know about them, and maybe you'll find them helpful too. So today's life hack is about music and about listening to music in the shower. I have this little ritual where I have this little playlist that I have for the shower. And the point of the playlist is, and how I decide what songs go on the playlist, is whether they make me want to dance. Okay, I like all types of music, all different types of music, but for this thing, I want music that makes me want to tap my foot or just move my body in some way or another. Okay, and it's a way of, as you get older, like when you're in your teens and your 20s and maybe even in your 30s, dancing is a thing. You go out and you dance, but as you get older, you stop. There's not so many opportunities for dancing, unless you actively go to dancing classes and that kind of thing. And if you do, that's beautiful. But I don't, and I'd say most people don't, but I don't know about most people. So what the idea of this is, there's something about having the music that makes me want to dance. I find myself doing little dances in the shower. I found myself doing a little dance, and every time I do it, I'm reminded of, this is great. This is great to move my body like this. There's something so joyous about dancing. It's good on so many levels, and it wouldn't be happening if I hadn't got this music on. And I change the songs up and I move it around. If I can figure out how to put a link, I'll put a link in the show notes for my little shower music thing. I think it's called Peppy. Is Peppy, Peppy is the name of the playlist on Spotify. But yeah, I highly recommend it. Because the reason I do it in the shower is because my mind can't. If I just kind of went, okay, I'm going to now have 5 minutes of dancing, I wouldn't do it. My mind would come up with a million reasons why I've got more important things to do. But I'm in the shower. There's, it's no problem. The music is on the background. So I have this habit of, I won't get into the shower unless I put my little music on. And I invariably find myself, grooving, moving, dancing along to the music. And it's great. So I highly recommend that to you, to get your own little playlist of music that makes you want to dance, makes you tap your foot. And for me, it's the shower. I think the shower is probably a good one because, as I say, I can't imagine myself doing it anywhere else. And it's brilliant. So I highly recommend that. Did you know I have a meditation training on that you can participate in? It's a 4-week training. Let me read you a little bit of that. I've been working on how to describe it. This training increases your consciousness powerfully in 4 weeks, which is true. If you're struggling to become more conscious, then this is the training you need. That's true as well. Consciousness is a vague concept and can be hard to quantify, let alone actively increase. Over 4 weeks, this training takes you through simple steps to increase your consciousness and give you tools to sustain this growth. That's true as well. So it's a very powerful little start training for how to fit meditation into your growth in consciousness. A lot of people have trouble meditating or sustaining meditation, and it's because they view it like going to the gym. Whereas this training it sort of shows you how the process of growing in consciousness is going on all the time, and meditation is like an intensification of that process. So it's great. If you're interested, if you go to furtheremergence.com and you'll see meditation training, just click on that link and you'll find out more about it. So I've had a question. This person says, "Hi John, I was just wondering how you hold with the Stoic notion of expect the worst and then you won't be disappointed. You mentioned in a recent podcast, if you expect the worst in your experience, you'll probably get it. Conversely, if we hope for the best, how can we not get caught up in expectations and then disappointment? I'm interested to know how you navigate this. Thank you." Okay, let's go out and answer this one.
Well, I understand the thing about the Stoic thing. I wouldn't live by that principle. I think that the Stoics are misunderstood because my take on what they're saying is basically accept things the way they are, which is good in terms of facing things as they are, because when things happen to us, we generally don't want to face it. We want to turn away. So I think the Stoics were saying that was like face things the way they are. What I was talking about was more to do with fear and this idea of planning for the worst. I don't think expecting, like setting your expectations low so you won't be disappointed. That's a miserable way to live, as far as I can see. Because it can go either way, because the future is the future. You don't know what's going to happen. What I was talking about was if you justify your fears, then your fears will be justified, meaning you'll bring it to bear. And you don't know. It's 50-50 with the future. So you may as well think about a future that you'd like, because in the moment, it changes things for you. Not externally. It's not like something just appears and, world peace breaks out. That'd be great if it happened. But it changes the way you feel on the inside immediately. When you keep steering your little ship towards the future that you'd like, it immediately makes you feel better. Now, that's different to manifestation and expectations and that kind of thing. That's a different thing, because then, you've got a tangible thing. You're kind of going, I want to create this. And if that on this date, and if it doesn't create, then you're like, what did I do it wrong or whatever? That's a different thing, because manifestation is a tricky business, because there's loads of different techniques for manifestation. They're all brilliant, but you have to include into them what you're trying to figure out in your life about yourself. Because if manifestation techniques were all completely solid, then they'd work for everybody. So there's a reason why they work for some people and they don't work for other people, or they work better for some people than they work for other people. And that's like anything in life. It's like, why do some people get sick and other people don't? I kind of deal with that regularly. And it's like, it makes sense when you kind of see, well, everybody's working something out about themselves. Everyone's got this deep inner question that they're working out about themselves. I go into this in a lot of detail in my book, Why Do We Get Sick? Why Do We Get Better? Available on Amazon. But this question that we have, fundamental question that's individual to each person. And, when you begin to look for it, you can see the themes of this question running through your whole life. And similarly, if you set out to manifest something and it doesn't manifest in the way that you want it, it will be because of your question. It will be because it doesn't line up with what your question is. If it does manifest immediately, then it is in alignment with your question. And the thing is, it keeps steering you back to your question, okay? which is a separate thing about kind of trying to shape your reality. And what I'm talking about in terms of, your fears will be justified for as long as you justify your fears, which is very different from facing what is in front of you as it's happening, which I think is what the essence of the Stoics were kind of getting or going on about, was like facing things as they are, which is different to how you would like them to be. It's like walking past 20 homeless people living on the streets and kind of going, oh no, that's not the reality I want. I'm not gonna even let that in. It's like letting it in, letting it break your heart, feeling the helplessness, feeling everything, and facing what is in front of you. I think that's what the Stoics were talking about, and that's really important, because what's in front of you is part of the feedback you're getting about your question. You can't ignore it, But I'm not talking about that. And setting your expectations low, no, don't encourage that. What I'm actually encouraging you to do is more about in the moment of, like, when you sort of come across the news, or you see a scary story, or you start to think about those homeless people, or you're in front of the homeless people, and you think about the future, instead of going, well, that's it, the country's ruined, we're going to the dogs, and everything's screwed, it's all going to, it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It's to not do that, but to kind of go, what's the future I want? Okay, and I'm going to think about that future, and I'm going to, again, we're talking about the future, which is an illusory thing. It hasn't happened yet. I'm going to think about the future I want because it makes me feel better in the present. That's the whole point, is to make you feel better in the present, because it's all illusion. The future is illusion. It hasn't happened, so you don't know. So what how it makes you feel now when you think about a terrible future, and when your mind kind of goes, well, that's it, everything's screwed. That immediately just is like, oh, it's hopeless and despairing, But when you shift it to, now what do I want? What's inside me, and what would I like to come outside me? I've got love for everybody. I would love all those people to have homes. I would love for everyone to be not cruel to each other, that's what I have inside me. That's how I am. That's what I would like to see. Okay, when I think about that, and I feel like the way I think about it maybe has an impact, it makes me feel better. So it's steering your ship towards the future you want in the future, to help you feel better in the present about things. Okay, and also coupled with, and paradoxically, facing what's in front of you and using it as feedback to help you figure out what your question is. And with manifestation and expectations, better off not to have expectations at all. Like, sure, do all the manifestation stuff if you want, but don't have any expectations about it. I know that's part of it, and some of them you have to sort of live in the future and all that kind of thing. But if it makes you unhappy, it's useless. If it makes you anything that makes you unhappy in the present, it's not worth it. Just jettison it. Okay.
In response to the question I post on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment in your spiritual life? This person writes, here's a struggle that's been tossing around in my head. It's increasingly frustrating when I feel like others don't fully understand me or the spiritual journey I'm on. Despite my best efforts to communicate and share my experiences, it seems like people only see the surface level struggles and make assumptions about who I am. I'm starting to realize that maybe those individuals are not the right people for me. It's important for me to remember that not everyone will be able to connect with me on a deep level, and that's okay. I need to seek out those who can offer more understanding and support. In the meantime, I will try and stay true to myself, the present, and focus on my own growth and development, rather than seeking validation and approval from others.
Yeah, other people. Not easy. Not easy when you're into the kind of spiritual thing and you're into consciousness. It's not. It's a lonely old path. There's no getting away from it, because most people are not interested. Most people are interested in all the things that people are interested in. In the Kardashians and in that kind of stuff. Nothing wrong with the Kardashians and nothing wrong with being interested in them, but it means that you have to face the fact that you're probably in the minority and that your perspective and your passion and what you love is not common. Okay. And in that, you can feel very lonely. You can feel like, oh, I just want to be able to talk about spiritual stuff with people. And I want to have, I want to have spiritual friends and that kind of thing. And that's lovely and very understandable once you know that ultimately everything falls away. Ultimately, you have to let go of everything. I think I think you have an idea of that in what you were saying about being true to the present and true to your inner nature. And, you have to be willing to let it all go for this thing that you love. And it's a paradox of the more you let it go, the easier it is to be around people. Like I can be around people all day long, and I never talk about anything like this that I talk about in these podcasts, unless it comes up, unless there's an opening, unless there's a question, or unless there's some kind of communication from them that this is of interest to them as well. Because if it's not, it's kind of disturbing to them. You're asking, you're talking about things that they don't want to think about. And that's no judgment on them. You're actually disturbing things, because the more you get into it, the more you begin to see the great movement of life. And there's this beautiful orchestration going on, where everything fits together so well, so amazingly. And more and more, I have become very sensitive to not interfering with that, to not kind of disturbing it, to trust it and to trust the unfolding and to let it, to more be in awe of watching the unfolding, because it's like we all have this compulsion to kind of teach, as soon as we come across something great, we discover something great. It's just natural. We want to share it with everybody. Look, I found this beautiful new coffee shop. Hey, all my friends, all my family, you should all go to this coffee shop. It's fantastic. Well, we have the spiritual equivalent of that. It's like, oh, I've had an insight. I'm going to tell everybody about it, But really, it's better to kind of watch and see how people get there on their own. Yeah, it might take them longer, but bear in mind, everyone's got blind spots, including me, including you, and we can't see them. So it's always going to look more obvious what is going on for somebody else. Okay, if somebody sits there and tells you their problems, it's very easy to kind of go, oh, what about this and what about that? Okay, but if you switch it around and you tell them your problems, they could say the same thing for you because they can see your blind spots. Okay, so similarly, you have to kind of, when you look at people and kind of see things unfolding like that, you have to kind of go, well, that's obvious to me, but it's not obvious to them because they're in there working through their own consciousness, which is another way of saying their blind spot. And it's a trap to kind of think, oh, well, I would really help them if I just told them the answer. You never help anybody by telling them the answer, particularly if they haven't asked you a question, because it's much more powerful if they figure it out for themselves. Okay. So, like, I got enlightened in '96. I didn't do anything. I didn't. I told I could count the number of people on one hand that I told about it. And it wasn't until I wrote Maya Noise that I began to talk about it, okay? For that reason, I was just watching the beauty of life unfolding and life sorting it all out. And I still do that, okay? And then part of it was, this uprising of, well, time to write a book. And it's like, really? I don't want to write a book. I don't want to write a book about all that personal stuff. And I certainly don't want to talk about getting enlightened. And it was like, no, that's what you got to do. When I'm talking about doing this second voice, it sort of came up in me, Similarly with meditation and podcasting and all this kind of stuff, talking about this stuff, This was the last thing I wanted to do, but it came up inside. So, like, that's about not being rigid about things and not sort of feeling like, I don't feel like I'm teaching anybody. I don't think you can teach spirituality. All I'm ever doing is sharing my perspective. It's like this, well, this is what it looks like to me from inside me in my little experience here, So I think a perspective of humility and of that life knows better than you do, I do, that my little perspective is little, you know? Like it's that thing I was saying a couple of episodes ago about you are a drop of the ocean. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're the whole ocean in a drop, you know? But you're still a drop, you know? Like you have the divinity in you, but it's still just a little bit of divinity compared to the big divinity, okay? So I sort of stand back and let that get on with what it needs to do, you know? And waiting for the question is so helpful, because if you can, the more silent you are in your meditation and in your speech about these kind of things, the more space there is for people to begin to open up a bit. And you know, the little question comes out and you'll know it as soon as somebody asks you a question about this sort of stuff, for a real question. Now that's very different to someone just giving you a report. That's not a question. But when a real question comes, you'll hear it. It's like a bell going off inside you. And when that happens, I go even more quiet on the inside. And then I sort of see what I say, you know, and it's as much of a revelation to me as it is to them. So the more you let go of the idea of people understanding you and the idea of a spiritual community, because I can tell you from my own experience, spiritual communities, the ones I've experienced, they've got everything that the normal kind of community has as well. You've got spiritual pride, spiritual envy, spiritual greed, spiritual one-upmanship. You name it, you know, that's not spiritual, it'll be there as well. So that can be very disheartening. And if I can save you the time of having to do that, I am great. But the more you let go of the idea of wanting to have people who get you and understand you and just see the divinity, the spiritualness, or whatever you want to call it, in everybody, then you realize that everyone's part of the community, you know, because everybody's got consciousness, everybody's got that thing that you are yearning for. Everyone's got it in them. Some people are more covered over by it than others, you know, but it's there, you know, and if you're looking for it, which kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier on about the future, you know, it's like once you start looking for something, you'll see it everywhere, you know, and it's like people are not constant, we're not constant, so our own consciousness is a bit like weather patterns. Sometimes we're very covered, other times it's a clear blue sky, and some fantastic, beautiful communication will come through. But I understand it. I understand that feeling of loneliness, and does nobody get me? But I get you. I totally get you. You know. So here's one person who gets you. You know, and feel free to email me and let me know. And I'm in your community. I'm in your gang. I'm part of your tribe, and you're part of my tribe. So. And that's to everybody who's listening. Feel free to email me and tell me how it's going. You don't have to ask a question or anything like that. But in terms of there's one other person who gets you, I get you.
All right, well, that's all I have for you this week. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.